Hello to anyone who's joined so far. We'll get started in a few minutes. I'm just going to wait for some people to join. And in the meantime, don't mind my sips of water, please. I'm gonna be gabbing a lot, so you don't want to hear my mouth noises. Hey, I popped on a little early to do just a AV test for our stream. So if someone can in chat just let us know that everything looks good so far. You see a big old Red Meters logo and a little man in the corner. Thanks, Megan. Thank you, Rosie. So for everyone who's joined, just looks like I'm gonna probably get started maybe 1 or 2 minutes late, just to make sure I leave enough room for a good crowd to join us. Okay, I'll give it 1 more minute, and then we'll get started. Well, thank you to everyone who's joined so far. I imagine we'll get some more people who come in later, but so far I can see that we've got some current customers. We've got a couple global distribution partners. We have a couple people from competing technologies. And we know that you're consistently inspired by Red Meters, so we're very happy to have you here, and we wish you the best of luck. As you can see, we have a live chat going. We'd like to use that for a Q&A platform. So if you have questions while we're going through the presentation, it'd be great if you can make a note of those, but wait until the presentation's complete before unleashing them into the chat. Also, we'd really like to focus the Q&A on the software specifically that we'll be discussing. So if you have general Red Meters questions, then I'll provide a method at the end of the webinar for you to get to those. So this live stream, by the way, it will be available as a video link to go back and watch after the fact. We'll just have to do a little trimming on the beginning and the end to cut bits like this out. But if you come back to Red Meters YouTube page tomorrow, then that video should appear in our upload section. Let's see. Okay, good. Well, with all that in mind, let's go ahead and start the webinar. Okay, so many attendees will already know what the Red Meter is. They know how it works, but for those who don't, this next scene will provide some high-level context concerning the general principle of operation. So I will go away for a bit.
The Red Meter Toro was designed to replace nuclear density meters within a variety of industries and applications. An inline system, it precisely and continuously measures density in real time. Within the protective case, a flexible cartridge deflects as media passes through it. A highly sensitive laser measures the deflections of the cartridge, providing real-time process data. For more information and to learn how the Red Meter Toro can benefit your application, visit our website at redmeters.com.
Okay, so that is the Red Meter Toro. The Toro Plus is another version we've christened recently, so I'll just touch on it briefly. Now, it's a Toro system with an inline flow meter, so customers can have values like mass flow and accumulated solids over specific times. Unlike Coriolis density meters, large diameters, and abrasive slurries are not a problem for the Toro Plus. What we're christening today, however, is Cinder. So what is it? Why should you care? These are the important matters that we shall discuss on this day. Cinder is part of the technology ecosystem of the Red Meter, and that's made up of the physical, the highly specialized materials that enable the principle of operation to work, as well as the electronics. The front-end software, which you see, and the back-end, which you don't see, is also part of the ecosystem. And finally, the data science, which are the algorithms that power all the calculations behind the scenes. So Cinder is that middle layer. It's the software platform behind our current product, and it's the foundation of all future Red Meters products. Now, why would a company that makes density meters go out and build an experienced software development team to make a fully fledged platform? So we noticed a gap in the market. Now, industrials are way behind. If they have an interface at all, it's very old. Probably some digital numbers on an LCD display. Now, our development team has a history of creating software products that develop the type of user experience that modern customers expect. This means they're intuitive, they're beautiful, they're easy to use, they don't require much, if any, training to use. And you can read our recently published article about human-centered design to understand our philosophy more deeply. We'll drop a link to that in the chat section toward the end of the stream. But the longer-term strategic reason we created Cinder is that it's an extensible platform that will support much bigger and more powerful things to be released in the near future. What's on the market now? We'll blow through some examples of the types of software that the industrial world is using. This right here, this is called Brainchild. And what companies will do, let's say they don't have a software development team and they just, they'll buy this type of software off the shelf and they'll maybe white label it. They'll put their logo over the top of it, but they don't develop this. This is just, it's for all instrumentation. And for us, the issue is that it's not specifically made to handle one type of instrumentation or the values that come from those. It's made to sort of, everything can plug into it, but it doesn't really have much specialization. You also look at the interface, and I'm not sure exactly what the design standard is behind this, but it's not really stylistically consistent the way we would develop something. Let's look at this other one. This one, I asked for some examples for my team to pull down a couple of examples. They pulled down this one off of an actual instrumentation website. What this tells us is they might not actually have the software developed yet, but this is probably a mock-up. It looks sort of like a photograph of a screen that's displaying something from Windows. This represents sort of the probably the lowest on the totem pole. This one here is actually from a big multinational corporation, right? So this is this is not bad. This obviously has a software team behind it, but the issue for us, if we're kind of doing an analysis, is that because it looks like Windows XP, right? There's not like a lot of visual hierarchy. There's nothing really in the color scheme that tells you exactly where you should be looking. The fonts are all sort of the standard Windows fonts. So we wanted to get out of the late 90s with our design. Now this one here is sort of the ultimate example of no hierarchy, meaning you don't know where to look at any point. You don't know what's important and what's not important. You don't know what's critical and what's not critical. Everything is the same color. Everything is the same font size. There's just no visual way to understand what is top priority. And mostly it represents what we call, in the user experience world, we call it cognitive overload. There's just too many things going on. So at some point, a software engineer said, okay, the requirements were to show all these values. So here they all are, all at once. We took a different approach. Now, this is not Cinder. This is our current interface, or the interface up until today. Obviously, we don't think this is bad. We won't judge this too harshly, but we did see some room for improvement. So we had to restructure a lot of the back-end parts under the hood to reach that kind of extensibility that I mentioned earlier. And when I say extensibility, what that means is that the product is developed for adding onto it easily without having to go back and refactor code. That's just not efficient, especially if you're going to build something out. You don't want to sort of paint yourself into a corner. In software, we call that technical debt. Our main self-critique of this version of the software is that it wasn't very customizable. The main view here, it gives you an array of 6 different sensor types, and many of those will be irrelevant to your process, yet you can't hide them. Also, you can't change the scale on these graphs. That's set, although it does dynamically adjust if you go out of range. Now let's take a look at what we're releasing today. This is what you'll see when you first power up your red meter for the first time. It's kind of a blank canvas. The core idea behind the front end of Cinder was customization. And when I do a more detailed walkthrough of the software, I'll illustrate how you can tweak Cinder to your needs. But what this screenshot shows is that we used a set of design standards that are common between different types of software products. So if this looks familiar to you, that's by design. We want it to feel like other tech that you've interacted with before, so you don't need an engineer to fly across the world to train you on how to use the red meter. This business of having an OEM commission equipment is something we see as tremendously inefficient. It's an artifact of days gone by. So there's no reason that modern tech shouldn't be plug and play. I mentioned earlier that we wanted Cinder to be extremely customizable, so we made a view builder that will give you the data you want and only the data you want, scaled in the way you want it. Even visual styles are customizable, which I'll show you during the software walkthrough. This is another view featuring 2 display types, one of them a cross needle with 2 dimensions and an optimization box drawn around the optimal matrix of ranges. So for side-by-side comparison of the old versus the new, you'll see the original version on the left of the 4 to 20 output configuration module. So we built a lot of Cinder around feedback from user observation trials, which is a key step in human-centered design. What we did was we sat users in front of this and we watched them use it. And when they got confused or they made a mistake, we drilled into what the source of the confusion was. We eliminated all those in the new design, making everything clearer, removing data that isn't relevant to the task at hand. And we did this for literally every screen in the software. The older software we used had some limitations in the types of visualizations it could produce. So we had to make a cross needle using bar graphs. But with the new technologies upon which Cinder is built, we can draw anything we can imagine. So with this next slide, I'm going to introduce Murray Leach. He is our technical architect. He'll spend a couple of slides getting into the nuts and bolts under the hood.
Thanks for that, Justin. My role here on the project was really to make the decisions about which technologies we would use to build this new front end. So some of the goals there were really to make sure that what we did was reliable like the last version, and to make the development path itself as easy as possible. We needed to give access to cutting edge new features. Some of them ones that we knew we would want to add, and some of them that we don't know we will want to add next year, next month, as users come back with feedback about what they want to add that's specific for their use case. So we wanted to leave that door open so that we can add new things later, kind of in line with this extensibility idea. What we decided was that the front end should be based on web technologies. So these are technologies that you're already using every day. They're involved in every web page you can imagine. And some of the pieces of technology doing the heavy lifting are Vue. Vue is the framework for JavaScript that everything's built on, and it allows for some rapid building and testing. And we're focused on Vuetify, which is an extension of Vue, to enable material design. Now, material design is what Justin was talking about when he was saying familiar. Google developed this idea of material design, and the whole point of it is to have a well-researched, they put years and millions of dollars into making sure that what they do is intuitive and everybody understands it. And this has been deployed in software and on tablets and smartphones for almost a decade now. So almost everyone on the planet is already familiar with material design and how to use it, even if they're not aware that's what's happened. So everything seems to have the same look and feel, and things are in the place you expect them to be. Beyond that, a lot of what this product does is about visualization, and there's a library called Chart.js that we use to give us flexibility and extensive list of different ways to visualize data. So some of those are graphs, some of those are tickers, different numerical stylings and bars and things like that. So the door's open really for us to do whatever we imagine beyond what we already have in today. So I won't go into this particular slide in much detail. It's just kind of an illustration of some of the architectural decisions we had to make. We found an approach called microservices architecture, which divides different components into different services. So the entire back end is comprised of a totally different set of technologies and is addressed by a different team of people, which frees up the front end to be staffed by a new team who are focused entirely on front-end design, interaction, and user experience. So this opened the door for a couple of different things. One, it means that we've got an API to communicate between front and back end, and that gives us some advantages. It gives us a standard way in which the device can communicate with itself and with other devices. So we can actually have your third-party devices communicate directly with the product without having to use a front end. And it also means that that front end can run on other devices. So we could have a laptop in a control room, we could have a tablet in the field able to run this Cinder front end whilst talking to one or more other devices. So it opens the door for some new things that we'll be doing in the future. Part of the goals of this, one of the first things that we noticed was that we intended to make a massive hardware update in terms of the computing power available on the new range of red meters. And in one respect, that's a positive. It means that there's lots of new things we can do, but it actually presented something else we had to overcome, which was to make sure everything we build today that's intended for that new target high processing device has to also run fluidly on the previous ones. So that's something that we've focused on specifically for all of the things we've released today. Everything runs just as well on the old as it does on the new. So that was an important thing. We had to support everything that was in the existing interface, but if you've used it, there are some things about the way that data is organized and visualizations and the menus in particular that weren't totally intuitive. So we've had a massive reorganization of where and how things behave. So where they're featured in a hierarchy in a menu and how they behave when you interact with them. The whole point of that is to make it as easy to use as possible. There's no requirement to grab a manual at any time, and that there's less thinking to do when using the product, so that your brain is focused on your task, not interfacing with the data that we're giving you. So part of the entire process here, and when using technologies like Vue, was to enable us to make things quickly and easily. Each component can be made on its own, and we can deploy that particular feature or that particular screen or dashboard to our user testers to be able to give us feedback within days of building a particular feature out about whether it's good, what's good about it, and what needs to change, so that we can quickly iterate on each of those features and feed them back to the main code base. The whole idea is that this is in stark contrast to build the entire product, give it to a set of users, and then get some feedback, make massive changes to everything, and go back again. Because of this rapid cycle between building and testing, it means that we can very, very quickly get to a place where we're happy with each feature in isolation, pull them all together into one build, and shoot that out. What that's allowed us to do is get, in quite a rapid time, a piece of software we're very proud of. So the entire team has been able to work seamlessly together and overlap, and that's designers, coders, and testers all together, and produce something that we are very happy with, and we look forward to feedback from you guys on. With that, I'll hand back to Justin.
Okay, thanks, Murray. Yeah, that was a great overview of kind of what's going on behind the scenes and under the hood. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up the actual Cinder software, and just we'll take it for a little spin together. All right. What we're seeing here is that first screen that we showed earlier, which is what you see when you first power on the red meter. Again, it's kind of a blank canvas. We're going to play with it though and enhance it a bit. But before I do that, if you look at the top, you'll see what looks like a standard notification bar. And you should recognize this if you have a smartphone. Like this should look a bit like your iPhone or your Android phone. You have familiar icons up here at the top, like your Wi-Fi connectivity. Right now it's lit up because we're on Wi-Fi. You also have the Ethernet cable plugged in at the same time, so that's lit up. Like a phone, you'll have notifications. So we've got a set of notifications here. It will grab everything that you do in the screen, and basically every setting that you change, every time you open a menu and modify a configuration variable, and any event that happens will show up in that screen. Now, if there's any events that are sort of like going out of range, like you set a specific optimal range and they went out, that will show up in the alerts screen. So you have kind of an enhanced notification screen here that's alerts. These notifications, they'll persist, they'll stick around until an administrator deletes them. So we have a couple of different user permissions. We have an administrator, and administrators can do things like set their own pin and set the pin for the engineers. And then you have the engineer, and the engineer has access to all the critical functionality, but there are a few things they can't do, like they can't hit the upgrade button and get new software. Just a couple of things. They can't delete their own notification log. And that's because maybe the admin is the foreman on the job and wants to know exactly what the other engineers have been doing. So they will want to check the work of the people who came before them, and they can delete the notifications if they want to. Within this top left menu here, you have a lot of different features. Now, One of the things we listened to from the field from our original software is that getting on Wi-Fi just took too many steps. So people are normally, they're used to using their phone, and when you get a new phone and it says, okay, let's connect to your Wi-Fi, it's basically 2 buttons. It's like, connect and then enter your Wi-Fi password. With the older version of our software, you had to plug in a USB keyboard. You had to go through a few extra steps. We realized that wasn't very fun in the field, so we fixed that in this one. No keyboard needed. There's an on-screen keyboard that pops up when you need it. You just hit connect, enter in your Wi-Fi password on the on-screen keyboard, and you're online. So thank you for the feedback from the field. The other thing you can do is enter the common constants for your specific process. So let's say your carrier density is actually 2,400 kilograms per meter cubed. You can change that here, or your carrier fluid is maybe pure water, so we'll just make that 1,000 kilograms per meter cubed, or 1.0 SG. So you can change those here very easily. And those will get factored into things like your mass flow and your percent solids, of course. We'll get to custom display select in a minute. That's a fun one. Accumulator session. So there's an accumulator screen. If maybe you're dredging, or you're getting paid for microtunneling, and you're removing solids and you're getting paid by how much you're removing. You can start the accumulator. It will start basically a counter of how much solids you're removing based on what you put in for your solid component density and your carrier fluid density. And you can go back and pick any 2 times or dates, and it will give you these reports here will give you totals of how much mass and how much volume you've accumulated over those times. We think that's a really important thing for people who need a sort of an audit billing record that would give you something to actually look at on the screen to compare against maybe other notes that you're taking. Remote access. You can enable this or you can disable this. So if you enable it, then that means Red Meter support can log into your machine and look at things like the raw values of your sensors. And that's useful for support. So some people, they first get their Red Meter online and they're just like, hey, we want to validate this is working. Can you give us some hints about what's going on? We can do that. We can log in remotely and tell you what we're seeing. And we can chart your SG over time, or your mass flow, or percent solids over time. And if you want to turn that off, maybe you've got some information security concerns, you can just disable that, and then nobody can get into your unit. One-click language select. So right now we're on English. We could rapidly change this to Spanish. That changes the entire interface and all the menus, all the sub-menus within. We have French as well. And the great thing about this is that we can quickly, within 5 minutes, add another language in. So if we get a request from the field, I want Arabic, I want Korean, I want Portuguese, we can add those in. If they don't exist in the software you already have, in the Cinder version you already have, there is a 1-button upgrade that you can do to pull down the latest software build that we've released, and that will have your language in it. So if you look at the upgrade button here, we don't currently have a new version. You're looking at the latest version right now. But if you did, you would just hit the upgrade button and it just downloads, restarts the system, installs the software. So our older systems, sometimes you would need to change out the SD card. We'd have to actually send out new SD cards. No more messing with the hardware, no more swapping out SD cards. You just download right from there. Now let's do a little of the customization I was talking about. So we're going to go to display setup. First of all, I want to show you this cool night mode feature. So it changes the whole color scheme to be like a dark mode. This is useful for glare. So if you're out in the field and you're in direct sunlight, it's causing a little bit of glare. It may be hard to see the white screen. So this will actually make things a bit easier, and it changes the entire color scheme, including all the submenus. We'll go back to light mode. So display setup. Now right now we're on the default side-by-side view. If I just click these arrows here, I can go to all the different sort of prefab configurations that we have. I'm looking at everything here. I think I want to go back to this cool one that was one big sensor. That's my SG. That's what I care the most about. Over, let's see, we'll put pressure in there, and we'll put mass flow. There we go. So when I click view display, I'm going to have to give this a name. We'll call it webinar 02. And now we have our customized display. So the mass flow that's currently going through there, we've got somebody kind of messing with the knobs, actually changing the settings by messing with the inputs. That's out of the range that we set. So that what we'll do if it's out of range, see it's off the scale, the whole chart will turn blue. That way we wanted everything to be at a glance. So you don't have to look at and analyze what's going on. Everything is just kind of screaming at you what's happening. So when you looked at that other interface that had just everything at once, that was sort of the literal opposite of what we wanted to do. Now let's see what we can do with the SG. So right now our range is -2 to 5. I want to shorten that up a bit. I'm going to go to this manual min and max. I'm going to change my slider interval to a whole number. And I'm going to click this minus button to just shorten that range a bit. And data amount, so that's sort of the time scale that we're looking at. I want to increase that, have a little bit more data, a little bit more historical data. Now, I also don't like just that solid line. I'd like that to be an area graph, a filled graph. So I'm going to click on that. Now, pressure, I don't really care about my historical data. What I want to see is just what the current pressure is. So I'm just going to make that a number instead of a graph. Or if I wanted to, I could make that a bar graph. Let's look at the bar graph just because it's a little more photogenic. There we go. And you can see my pressure is actually going up and down. With this one, let's say I want that one to be the big number. And I want to set the manual min max. I want to expand the range a bit. So I'm going to go back to my slider interval. Going to make that by 5s. Drag that up a couple notches, and now we have a bigger range. There we go. So that's my custom graph, right? When I go out of this and come back, it'll save all those settings. So right now I'm going to choose a different custom display select. If we go into custom display select, this is all the things that we've already created. So webinar 02 is now in there, but let's just go to our default. There we go. And this will just see our temperatures out of range. That's because we don't have a temperature sensor connected, so it's just giving us kind of a nonsense value. -246 degrees. I guess we're on Pluto today. Let's pick another cool custom display. Let's see, what else have I created here? I'm at SG and pressure. There we go. I will make this bar graph, and I will make this an area graph. There are a lot of features I could go into with Cinder, but I think this gives you an idea of the look and feel. With that, we're really excited to talk about this. We're very proud of what we've done. We're proud to be on the vanguard of technology creators, industrial technology creators who we're moving things forward into the modern world of usability and scalability and extensibility into the next industrial revolution that's coming for us all. And that is the industrial Internet of Things. So Cinder is a bridge between where we are today and where we're going. And we'll be out there at the forefront when everyone begins connecting all of their sensors, all their locations, their entire global operation together to take their business to the next level, which is an inevitability. We'll be there at the very forefront, making sure that we're ready and we're not playing catch up. So let's go ahead and open the question and answer floodgates. Please use the chat to ask questions. For those who weren't here during the early kind of housekeeping bit that I was going into, we really want to keep the questions centered on Cinder specifically. If you have general comments or questions about red meters, or if there's a question you don't want to ask on this public forum, please drop us a line at solutions@redmeters.com. We'll be happy to engage with you that way. I'm going to drop that email address into the chat. If you're interested in participating in some market research concerning the forthcoming products we're developing or concerning Cinder as you've seen it so far, please let us know in the chat by sending us email. Some things we're interested in. We're looking at what sort of like display units do you want to see? Are there any other features that I didn't show you? We may have them already, but things that you'd want to see, we just want to make sure we sort of cover all the ground. And I'll respond to questions. I'm also going to drop the link in the chat to the human-centered design article that I mentioned earlier, if anyone wants to take a look at that. see, I don't know whether I dropped it in the right place. So this may pop up a couple times. I apologize for the repetition. Let's see. Here is the email address to ask questions that are not Cinder related. There we go. And there is a bit of delay, so forgive me if I don't answer you right away. There's actually like a 30-second or maybe a minute delay between when you actually send your question through and when I see it. So in the meantime, so we don't have dead air, what I can do is talk about some of the questions I commonly get from the field. How is the red meter remotely accessed by our support team? People want to know that. Is it secure, right? So the red meter, it's only able to be remotely accessed if that feature is enabled within Cinder. So it uses what's called an SSH connection to view the data historically. So we're not actually grabbing your screen. We're not viewing your screen. We're not able to log in and spy on everything you're doing. All we can see is the raw sensor values. And people also ask, if they have an older version of the software, how can they get the latest version? Well, I mentioned that software upgrade button. So if you have the current version, we're going to be able to send you an update as well without you having to change the SD card. You just need to let us know, like, hey, I want to get Cinder. We'll also send out a notice to everyone that this is available now. So you'll just have to, if your red meter's not connected to the internet, you'll have to get it online and connect it so that we can actually push it to you. The other concern people have when they see that this is a connected device, they'll say, does it have to be connected to the internet in order to function? And that's a no. The only features that require the internet connection are the remote access support and the software update downloads. All the other features will work entirely offline. We realize some of you are a mile below the surface of the earth, or you're in the middle of the ocean on a dredging barge, and you're just not going to have access to high-speed wireless internet. Another common question we get is, the red meter has a liner, and the liner has a wear sensor, because the liner will eventually wear out over time. It could take as much as 3 years of running, high velocity with abrasive slurries, nonstop 24/7. But eventually, it will sort of wear down. And people want to know, how will I know when that wear sensor is triggered? Well, in Cinder, we created a persistent warning in the interface. So when the wear sensor's been broken, that persistent warning, it won't disappear until a new cartridge is installed. The warning signal itself is actually also available as a 4-to-20 output. So if you're not really using the HMI that much and you're mostly using just the raw output, the amperage that's coming out of the red meter, it'll appear as that as well. There are 2 concurrent 4-to-20 outputs. You can set them in the software, in our software, to anything that you want. So if you want to see specific gravity out on one, and you want to see wear sensor on the other, or you want to see pressure on the other, you can change those. You can actually set the scaling as well. And you can put it in simulation mode, right? So you can say, if I want to configure this to my SCADA, I want to be able to send a specific amperage out and tell my SCADA, this is what we're seeing. Any electricians or electrical installers that are viewing this will know what I'm talking about. You can turn the red meter into simulation mode, just like you would when you're calibrating a flow meter or a pressure sensor. Output types, that's another big question that we get. So we have 2 channels of 4-to-20 milliamps, and we have Modbus over TCP IP. There is also the ability to just export the raw values in a CSV format. So it'll look like an Excel spreadsheet, basically, with timestamps and with all the raw values that correspond to all those timestamps. So if you wanted to throw that into like an Excel chart and graph like a specific set of timestamps the way you want to present the data to maybe like your internal team and the way you want it, there's a button, there's an USB port on the red meter HMI. You just plug that in, you hit export, and you'll have a jump drive full of CSV files. Sometimes people have their own software that they want to integrate with red meters beyond just the outputs. and you're in luck because we have a well-documented application programming interface that's commonly called an API. And so that's a layer with which we can provide that layer to your integration team, and we can provide all the documentation. So let's say you want to integrate it with your software guys will basically make calls to our API to say, I want this piece of data and I want it in this format. So we've created that. We are actually integrated with a software called HiPack right now, and that's a dredging software, and it has all sorts of features. But we provided them our API, and they can actually pull the red meters interface however much they want to into HiPack software and use it in real time. That was a really good partnership that we made within the past few months. Some people will also want to, they look at how powerful Cinder is, and they're going to say, well, can I just plug in other instruments beyond the red meter? Yes, you can. You can currently use Cinder to display pressure and flow because those values already come from discrete sensors within our ecosystem. So as long as they have a 4 to 20 output, we have 4 to 20 inputs that they can connect to. So they can calibrate them within our software. Our software has a calibration module for external devices. You just set a high and a low, and it sort of interpolates between those two. So yeah, you could do that. You could just have a pressure and a flow meter connected. The red meter, however, it makes a unique calculation for density, so other density measurement devices are not going to translate. Now, I don't know if I have a lot of lag or I'm just not getting a lot of questions from chat, or my presentation was so thorough that you're left speechless. You have no other questions to ask. I'll assume that's the case, but this feed will be up. It will be available for stream as early as probably this afternoon once we do a little bit of trimming to it. And you can share this with your internal teams. I don't know if the chat will show up in the video feed, but again, just take note that you can send an email to solutions@redmeters.com with any questions that you have about Cinder or about red meters at large, and we'll be happy to answer those. For the people that did join today in real time, we appreciate you being here in real time and taking some time out of your day. We really hope you enjoyed this. We hope it was informative. We're really excited for you to get your hands on Cinder and to get some feedback from the field. We know that you'll love it. We know that it'll be easy to use, and it'll make installation even quicker than it is already. And one less thing to worry about, right? How do I navigate that interface? So thanks a lot, and we look forward to hearing from you all soon. And with that, I'll end the stream. Goodbye, everybody. Take care.